Welcome back to the Crochet Carousels, my friends at yarnspirations.com. Today, it's all about connection of doing a flat stitch join to connect two of the squares together. So as we talked about in the other video, you have all of this extra yarn that's left over at the end of a ball. So they're all like that. So you have all these tail ends. So don't be snippy about cutting that down if you are planning on using that to connect. This here we can do as a whip stitch, so we can sew it to itself on the other side. So if you use these and you do a whip stitch, it's just nice and simple, and you're just going to put it through a tapestry needle like this. So I'm going to show you two methods of joining for these. So there's not enough yarn to do a flat stitch join, but there is enough yarn to do the whip stitch. So you're going to use the back loop of the corner because you're in the corner of here, and we come back to the corner on this side. And what we're doing is we're causing the yarn to loop over top. Okay, and I like to go at it from this perspective. So I'm going to come into the back loop. So if you go into a full stitch, you're grabbing here, but then you end up with a lump. So if you just use the back one of this one, and then on the first stitch here, it is the back loop here. This sewing is going to sink down in between the stitch work. So now we come into your next one, and then it will be the middle of this one. And because you have the right stitch counts on all your squares, it does a great job. So you're just going to whip stitch yourself across. And you have to use, for whip stitching, I always recommend you use either the green or the purple. Don't use a separate color that's not in your blanket if you want this seam line to be invisible. So this is also called an invisible join for obvious reasons, because you can see it's almost invisible. I mean, with the yarn that it is, it does a great job. So I'm going to come to the here, and so I'm looking for the tops to know exactly where to go. So I'm just going to whip stitch myself across, and I'll be back in just a moment. So I'm coming all the way to the other side, and I'm just matching stitch to stitch, and I'm going to go right to the corner. So the whip stitch has really no flexibility to it, so that's something you do got to be conscious of. So if you're too tight with it, it's a problem. And you come right to the end, and you can see that it pretty much, the purple looks like it butts up, and it looks like there's nothing there in order to hold it, and the other side is just like this. So it's a very strong join, even though it's using just the back loops only, and at the very end you're just going to weave in your ends down through. So make sure you weave it only in on the color that you're using. Okay, so I don't recommend whip stitching something like this with a color that doesn't exist in the join, because it's hard to make it look consistent when the color doesn't match. So it's called an invisible join for a reason. And so you're just going to whip stitch this and secure it in, and when you secure it in, just weave your tails back and forth a total of 3 times. Don't be cheap about the remaining of this yarn, because it's just going to end up in the garbage. So just make sure you use as much as you can for hiding in your tail ends so that they don't pop out. So the next part of this tutorial is I'm going to show you the flat stitch join, and you're going to need a different yarn ball in order to make that happen, because the joining, the ending of one of these squares that you saw is not enough to do the flat stitch join. So let's begin to do that next. I'm doing a flat stitch join, and I'm going to use Bernat blanket vintage white. And I do not want to create a slip knot when I start this, and I'm going to come right into the corner of the chain work on one side, and I'm going to come into the opposite corner to the middle one on this side, and I'll explain where I'm going. So I'm just going into just like the chain work, and I'm just going to loop the yarn through and pull it through and through. I'm going to leave the tail end to the back side, and I'm going to pull the tail end so it's over here, so it's out of my way so I don't accidentally grab it. And I'm going to leave this on the back side as well, so your hands are going to act like a sewing machine. So we're going to move down the chain on this side and down the chain on this side. Then I'm going to take the yarn that's going to the yarn ball, wrap it around and pull through. Give it a bit of slack. This particular kind of joint has no flexibility to it. So if you're way too tight, you'll feel the repercussion of your blanket not being stretchy. Okay, so now we're on a top of a regular double crochet. So you want to focus on the one that's in front of you, go to the back loop only. So don't go into the full stitch, because then you'll end up with a lump. Go into the back loop on this one, and the one that you can see on this side is going to be the back loop of this one. Okay, so it's not the full stitch, it's just the back loop. And this is going to cause this to sink in between the stitch work. So back loop this side and back loop this side. And you're going to yarn over and pull through. Just give it a little bit more slack than you normally would, because it's not a flexible join. And so then you move to the next back loop on this side and the next back loop on this side and wrap and through. Always stay in consistency of the order, so don't jump to this side and then come back over. Always go in the same consistency to keep this lined up perfectly. So you can see that the off-white is going to really highlight the connection spots. So if it were me and I were you, like, you could look at the different types of granny squares that they have available in this type of yarn and then lay it on a table for the layout and then just put it together once you like the layout look. And you know, a lot of people, they go on Facebook too and they change the layouts and then they post multiple photos in the same comment saying which layout do you like better, and what they do is they put a sign on it, A, B, C, or D, and see what the public thinks. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it's what makes you happy as well. You know, everybody has an opinion, as we know in social media. So I've been sitting here yapping to you, almost like a stitch social, in doing this across. So you can hear in my voice that I'm not stressed at all, because I'm not. And I'm going to come right to the end. And so if I have more squares to join, you can keep on going. So I'm going to work my way through the chain now. So I go through the chain work to join the corners together. And I'm in the middle one here of this. And go to the middle of this one. And so if there was more squares to be done, you're just going to keep on going. So let me see if I have more yarn. Do I have more squares here? So if I wanted to put more squares together, just like you see, so I would just go on to the next chain. So the middle of this guy, the middle of this guy, and just bounce over and keep on going. Okay, so why trim your yarn and cause more headaches for yourself, right? Just keep on going across. Okay, so that's the first one of this chain. You do the next one of that same chain because you're in the corner. And then you're back in the stitch work. So you could go all the way across and then finish your yarn on the other side, and then turn your blanket around and just do the other side here. And when you get to this spot here, you just jump on over so they kind of crisscross over top of each other, just like so. And this would be the flat stitch join. In order to make it happen, let me show you how to finish these off if you were doing it this way. So let's finish this off. So let's just say that I'm at the edge of your blanket. Just trim the yarn long enough so that you can get it through a tail end and pull the yarn loop through to the front side of the work. And on this side here, because this is the ending, you're just going to want to put it through a tapestry needle to be able to hide this end. So just flip it on over, come to the back side, and just weave it through the center point. Because this is the white, you just want to stay directly underneath the white piece so that this yarn does not bleed through visually on the other side. And if you recall, I told you not to use a slip knot at the very beginning. We just used the loop, so you could just safely trim that yarn down. And on this side, because we did not start off with a slip knot, we need to secure this in with a tapestry needle. And I have found when I used a slip knot for the flat stitch join, it's really ugly on the front side of that first stitch. So if you just create a loop and then just deal with it later, it will look so much better. Make sure you keep going through different paths back and forth on the back side of this. Stay in the white section, and therefore it should be hidden when we turn it back over. And that would be the flat stitch join if you wanted to do something like that as well. So this is it for today. We hope you enjoy, and leave us some comments on what you're thinking today.